All right, everyone. Hey, thank you, and happy to be here. This is the May 8th meeting. Today it's a developer meeting. We're here with Kimberly Maguire, co-lead for the Aerial Robotics work group. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Hopefully, we got a nice presentation and meeting ahead of us. So we have a nice agenda on this course. I think Kim was already talking about this, but we're trying something new. We're moving to this course to, sorry, I get confused with also so many Discord names. So we got the agenda, and in addition to the agenda, we got a little bit more breakdown. And so before we had the slide decks in Google Slides, but in the name of searchability and visibility and making things streamlined and easier for us, we're gonna try this now. So, all right. This document is a wiki, and I think Kim is currently editing, taking minutes.
Yeah, correct. I'm the word test was me. So apparently it updates like that.
Yeah. So what I do, Kim, is usually save often, so that if anyone at some point wants to jump in, they can do that. Because if you keep it open the whole time with edit, no one will be able to jump in. But
okay, but maybe from now I can just go ahead and constantly edit.
Yeah, do your thing. Yeah. Good. All right. So intro and announcements. I think that was the intro, and then that was the first announcement. So we're moving minutes here. Let us know if that works for you. If it doesn't. Other than that, there's a Jazzy Jalisco tutorial party. So if you are not aware of this is the usual ROS tutorial party that happens through a few days after a release gets called. And it's just so that we can all create content for this. And it's a great, terrific idea that Catherine Scott is leading. So if you have some, I don't know, off time, downtime, or you're already working on a tutorial or any content, and if you think it would be cool, a great way to add more visibility to that tutorial would be if you add it to the ROS tutorial party, and then it will get shared and distributed in front of a lot of people's eyes. And you'll also be contributing to something that is critical to the ROS community right now. So please do so. There's also awesome swag, a lot of cool stuff. Let us know if there's anything we can do, and if there's any ideas on how we can contribute together as the Aerial Robotics community work group. Maybe we should discuss this at some point. So enough of that.
Can I add
any questions so far? Please go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, so it's not the tutorial part is not necessarily of making tutorials. It's about testing the existing tutorials mostly. But I think they'll be very more than happy if we add tutorials. But that's kind of the main part of this tutorial. And if you finish a lot of these issues, then I guess the more chance of swag you get. But yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Let's move on with the agenda. So next up, we got subcommittee updates. Thanks to everyone from the subcommittees, all the subcommittee leads that added their updates. Appreciate your help. Let's go through them real quick. So we got simulation update. Do we have anyone from the simulation team here? They want to speak to their update instead of me doing a bad representation of what you just wrote? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just testing several simulation packages, including Aerospace 2, Agipilot, and standalone visible with multi-motor. Okay.
And I have a hard time listening to you, Arsh.
Yeah, I'm a bit outside the network area, and I don't know. Let me check if I can find some good Wi-Fi.
Okay. Yeah, your gain is a bit too high, and it's a bit hard for me to understand. Did anyone get that?
Unfortunately, I don't. Maybe transcript it. But if there's anything that you would like to add to this to ours, just add it to the chat, and I will add it directly to the notes.
Yeah, I'll do that.
All right, I understood that.
All right.
I think that's probably
better. The next update. Thank you.
Yeah. There was somebody who had a question though.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had one question on the simulation update. Can I ask it here now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I read it, but I didn't understand what physics engine was used there. That was not mentioned, so it was not clear. What physics engine was it tested on?
Ash, if you can answer that in the chat, perhaps.
Yeah, so for now I was just using default gazebo, new gazebo. I think it's I forgot.
Yeah, because I was recently reading, and it looks like ODE is not supported in ignition. That's what I read, but I'm not sure whether that's the case.
Yeah, that's right. So like Gazebo, the new version, it uses Dart as its engine. I think there's also there's some work on a Bullet Featherstone backend as well, but ODE is only used for the collisions at the moment.
Okay, so that means ODE is still used in ignition.
Not for the rigid body dynamics, but it's only used for its collision. Its collision engine is used. So the main rigid body physics uses Dart.
Okay. Okay.
And then any sort of aerodynamics is done through a plugin or a series of plugins, which are separate. So the core Dart engine only handles the rigid body motion.
Okay, so like parameters like damping, it's still done by ODE or Dart? Parameters.
That's done by Dart. So anything to do with the rigid body motion would be done by the Dart engine. Anything to do with intersecting collision measures and their bounding boxes would be done by ODE. And anything to do with aerodynamics calculations would be done by a custom plugin. So Ash has mentioned a couple there. So the main thing for I guess for the copter would be things like damping and things like the parameter names are still very similar to what they would be for ODE. They kind of get passed through, but they may be interpreted differently. But from a aerodynamics modeling point of view, the main interest is not the rigid body motion, but the actual custom plugins that deal with multi-copters and multi-rotors and the controllers and things like that. And they've been where they're in the new Gazebo, they've pretty much been ported from their classic versions with changes to cope with the new Gazebos, like the way it handles physics systems, but the actual calculations have been ported across like for like where possible, with maybe a couple of bug fixes. But you should recognize them from the previous versions of Gazebo if they're available there.
Yeah, the main reason why I asked this is because I am putting a code from the old version of the Gazebo to the new version in ignition, and I did face some problems, especially with the damping. So like I was thinking that maybe I didn't put the tags properly, so I was not sure where to see the documentation for this. So
yeah, they may be different because the way that ODE handled damping, they were sort of they get translated into sort of various kind of joint constraint sort of and the physics engine may handle that differently. That's something to look into.
Yeah, the main reason is that like I know people working on morphing configuration or morphing configurations also would be so much interested in this. Yeah. Like
okay, yeah. Maybe that's a compare and contrast. It could be something that the Gazebo team could offer. The core Gazebo team could provide a bit more information about that. And for porting plugins, there is a tutorial for that, quite a nice one actually, and it was done by actually it was done using the ArduPilot. The original version of the ArduPilot plugin was ported to the new version of Gazebo as an example. It's changed quite considerably since then, but there's a tutorial for doing that, and I think it's in maybe the physics library tutorial documentation for Gazebo. If you're looking to sort of port a Gazebo Classic plugin to Gazebo Sim, so that might be useful as well.
Thank you, Riz. Vignesh, can we follow up on Discord, please?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Like that'd be awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, let's keep going with the subcommittee updates. Next up, we got documentation. Kim, do you want to give a quick overview of what happened?
Yes. One moment. Yes, it's not great, not handy to be the node list and.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Perhaps Alexis, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have the? If you can perhaps show the how the website looks so far, then I can
Sure.
finish my up notes. Then you
Is
can
this
just share it.
is this the link?
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I got it. You got list of books, courses.
Yeah, just cycle through it. It's a kind of the MK doc says in the kind of the read the doc type of format. So it's yeah, it's very similar to how Ross is doing the documentation, although they have a totally different backend. I'm not sure where based on that is. It's definitely not Markdown. But yeah, it looks already quite nice. We also have like an edit functionality in there as well. It's already online. The only thing I think, if I have a quick look at our GitHub projects, real quick, projects. There's still a couple things remaining before we should make this a bit more public. We would like to have fewer statistics. Like now we have them. We're using the GitHub analytics, but everybody that goes to this, we don't see. And I don't want to use anything like Google Analytics or cookie tracking or whatsoever. It would be nice to have some kind of tracking that we can only see the views, but it leaves nothing behind in terms of the users. Because I think the only thing that we would need to see is like how popular this is and how attractive of how nice the pages are, and if people are hardly looking at one. So yeah, ours is saying cluster maps. I'm actually thinking about goat counter as well. At least that's what I've been using, which is also open source. And yeah, it doesn't do anything like a cookie tracking. I'm not exactly sure what they're using.
Yeah,
yeah. So
there's
that
an
is
issue also. So if you have any suggestions, please share them
yeah.
on the issue.
But once we got that settled and we have at least like some kind of page views that we can kind of monitor the popularity of the pages, then we're probably good to go to just share it as much as possible on social media, I would say, because we would like to have this word out so that people can also add and change the information as well. That'll be awesome. So yeah, that's the current state. Lex, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yes. About what kind of plugins we can add to the project. So it is a little bit or from our end for developing the website, maintaining it. There are some plugins that are also listed for in an issue right there on GitHub. So if you are thinking about any other plugins that we can add, then it'll be highly appreciated. Or if you have used it before, if you can give us some of your feedback to know if we can apply it correctly for this project or not.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alexis.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'll add my notes later for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to the next subcommittee. We got the indoor navigation by Mayang. Is he on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, can you give us a quick update, please?
Yeah, so I finally bit the bullet and upgraded my system to Ubuntu 22, although I had to reflash Ubuntu for that. I installed Humble, and natively I started to look into packages which looked interesting from Bonolo's list, which was Aerostack 2, and the Arduino Pilot ROS package which was there. And I was trying to kind of do setup simultaneously, but I realized that they both use different versions of Gazebo. Like one's on Gazebo Fortress in terms of the demos which are out there, and the Arduino Pilot ROS work was based off of Gazebo Garden and Harmonic. So I stuck to doing Aerostack because the binaries were packaged much better and it was easier to at least get installation sorted out. But then I ran into some hiccups with the default demos for Gazebo. And I created a ticket, and I was very glad to see that somebody from Aerostack reached out and they've asked for like supporting like evidence, and they'll help me out. So I haven't gotten the chance to add screenshots yet, but I will be following up on that sometime this weekend. So yeah, it's basically to understand what sort of gaps exist in like these packages as they are with the latest versions of LTS simulators which are out there as well, so that we can kind of take a common platform or an interesting package to start some work.
Thank you, Mayank. Anything else?
No, that's it from me. Any questions, comments?
Not for now. Thank you. Let's move on with the agenda, and now we have the discussions. So, Kim, do you want to kick it off with the first one? So, agree on subcommittee goals.
Yeah, 1 moment. Yeah, there was a couple of to-dos of the last let's say meeting, which was for simulation. It was to define more precise goals for the subcommittee. That was like, if it was handy to provide a standard set of environments. Let's discuss about that, and perhaps also like indoor navigation last time was determine a standard environment to simulation for people to work on. Yeah, right now Ryan is not here for outdoor. Is Ryan here at this moment? But I guess like no, he's not. So yeah, those are kind of like, so first let's start with simulation, perhaps, because I think it would be good to have like some goals defined in general.
All right. I guess to kick off the conversation, what was the intention behind the initial interest for the subcommittee?
Yeah, from the intention was that because last meeting we actually talked about that, the subcommittees were still a startup, but it was still kind of like a very, how do you say it? Yeah, a little bit of a confusion of what to work on exactly. I don't know if you would agree, the leads of the subcommittees of simulation indoor in navigation, but it's more of like, the yeah, that's pretty much the reason why I would like to kind of like address this, and that's what this discussion part could be used for. So yeah, that's all I can add.
Yeah, I could add maybe part of it was simulation is a requirement of quite a few of the other streams, so it does come up, and for the hardware stacks and the communities using like the PX4 and ArduPilot stacks, there's often a demand from the users to have offboard control and offboard integration using ROS, and the kind of, so we need a simulation environment for that as well, and so it's about the kind of the crossover between some of the other streams that are going on here, and providing sort of simulation environments for offboard control for some of the flight controller stacks. I'd guess that from my point of view, that's how I'm interested in it. And one of the things that often comes up is the fidelity of the simulation environments that are available to ROS as opposed to some of the other things. And some of the simulation environments that had kind of quite good visual fidelity, like AirSim, have been discontinued. So, and then there's old ones like JSB Sim, which again are kind of specialized for various things. So Gazebo is one that gets used quite a lot, especially for multi-vehicle simulation, but there's often questions about the fidelity of it. So we have, so one of my interests is to improve the fidelity of the aerodynamics in Gazebo, and that would be a kind of a stream I'd be following. It would be useful maybe to have it discussed here as well, but it's kind of a question of how we go about doing that. Aside from that, it's really just environments that get used by other streams. So for the outdoor planning, it's like Ryan's been looking at a way of automatically loading digital elevation data into Gazebo and things like that. So there's a little bit of just improving it for its own benefit for off-board control, and then there's the feed in from the other streams. And at the moment, we don't have anything documented for things like improving flight fidelity and things like Gazebo. As we do investigations in that, we may document that better. But certainly where other streams have requirements, I guess it's providing information there. And the work that's been done on providing an overview of what's available has been really good. I mean, I haven't been involved in doing that so much, but that's really quite good to have, where people have got somewhere to land, at least in terms of seeing what's available.
All right, thanks for the reminder. Perhaps that is since you mentioned the other streams, maybe like Mayong from Indoor, maybe you can give an let's say some thoughts on that. Like, what would you guys need from the simulation crew?
I think the open question from last meeting, and like based on the immediate problem that I faced, I wanted to know from Reese and Arsh if can we agree on, so I think there is some sort of consensus across subcommittees that Ubuntu 22 plus Humble is what should be our default base. But on the simulator front, like based on my experience with Aerostack 2 and like what I was trying out with RT Pilot ROS, I'm a bit confused on what should be the way forward on which version of Gazebo we stick to, because there seems to be a big gap between Fortress and Harmonic or Garden. And I wanted your thoughts on, like, for example, one strategy is that Garden is LTS or Harmonic, I think, is LTS. We stick to that. And some of the recent work on simulation of SLAM with Ardu is inside Garden / Harmonic. So we kind of focus some dev effort on adding support for that in Aerostack. That could be like one approach we take. Or do you feel there is value in maybe evaluating the gaps between Fortress and Garden or Harmonic? And like, yeah, just give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think supporting Fortress is really difficult because there's such a really big change between Fortress and Garden.
Exactly.
So I think the sort of certainly Ryan and I have got no interest in supporting Fortress at all. Just it's too different, doesn't run on a number of platforms. I think we've had a bit of discussion about really just focusing on Harmonic, is that's going to be the target for the new ROS release. And most of what we've been working on works with both Gazebo, Garden and Harmonic anyway. So Harmonic is the long-term support version, so that makes sense to be the one to put the effort into. And for versions before Garden, there's it's really, I mean, apart from legacy applications, there's really just too much work to try and backport any of the support that we've got for the flight controller platforms to that version. I think it's just too difficult. Given it's a voluntary exercise, I think it's going to be too much to do.
So let's say if Aerostack looks like an appealing framework for further development on indoor navigation, then as at least a baseline, putting in some dev effort to migrate support or like to get Aerostack to working with Harmonic could be like a good enough goal in terms of very concrete short-term development that we could do. And I feel that also has the added advantage that other packages like at least Ardu Pilot ROS, which use Cartographer or at least have like a basic POC of working with nav2, those also stick, like you said, that works with Harmonic. So I think that could be a way forward, right?
Yeah, I think that would be a request for the Aerostat community. So is your proposal that we help take it forward, or is it that
maybe
I'm
we
not
could.
sure who you're going to find to do that. So I think it would have to be a request for Aerostat to move their
I may.
plugins forward.
Yeah.
We have somebody
ahead.
from Aerostech too
Oh,
here.
sorry.
So.
Go ahead, Mia.
Yeah, I want to say that we have ported, not ported, but supported Harmonic now in the source, in the main branch of Aerostack 2. We have some tweaks in the CMakes, and maybe it's, we have tested in some examples, maybe we have some issues, but if you install it from source and you have Harmonic installed, it should work with Harmonic. We made these changes like 1 week ago, so it's pretty new.
Yeah, timing. So then maybe what I could take up is I actually don't spend more time on Fortress since I was already seeing an issue there. I try your approach of setting up Harmonic, and maybe as a first low-hanging fruit, I could help you with documentation of like an example to at least upgrade your docs so that the basic default gazebo example, you could add one more page maybe with Harmonic working and how people can set it up, at least until you package binaries. Even if it's from
Yeah, but
source.
binaries, as we are compliant with ROS distros, I think Humble is Fortress support, if I'm not wrong.
That is true.
And we will keep this with our binaries. So, I mean, we are planning to move to Jassy in order to have this harmonic fully supported by the ROS distro. But if you, I think you can try if you, but we have to make the new release from binaries if we want to.
So my question really was, would it make sense to have some community contributed documentation, considering there's going to be a lot of people sticking to Humble for a while for at least like the base platform, and maybe not everybody would jump. People who are doing PX4 or Arduino pilot stuff might not jump directly from Humble to Jazzy, but there would still be some interest in working with Gazebo Harmonic instead. So I feel like it could be a nice, just tutorial or example or something for those who are like with an expert mode kind of disclaimer that, hey, you need to build it from source or whatever. But that I think that could provide some value.
Yeah, of course. So if you can have some points to document or all these things, you can put it on our issues and we can work on it also.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Sorry. I would like to add that at least I've been helping out with the Gazebo team a bit to make their documentation a bit more clear, because it was a lot of people are on the impression that Harmonic is a standard for Humble, which is not. It's a standard for 2204, but it's, or the recommended for 2204, but it's not linked with Humble, which makes things very, very complicated. So they have tweaked out their documentation a bit to make that more clear. But yeah, it's too bad that Fortress doesn't have a lot, apparently, which is maybe a good thing to do. Is there, I guess, for the final part of the discussion, do we think that we can there's perhaps something that we can kind of work towards? It seems like the simulation and indoor, you guys can kind of work together on setting up these standards, or at least like, improving the way things are. Is that something that is indeed the next goal for this, for you too?
I think today's call hints at least like a way forward, or I think it's mostly decided that Ubuntu 22 plus Humble plus Harmonic is a good enough candidate platform for us to start. And unless we see major stuff breaking, I think that aligns with whatever Endeavor and Sim are trying to do. I think
All right.
we need not stress this out, and I guess it's a good enough decision based on whatever foresight we have right now or exposure we have and inputs we're getting from everyone.
All right. And will this help you also to kind of get forward and formulate the next goals, let's say, now
Yeah.
that this has been cleared out?
Yeah.
Quick question for Mayank as well. We sort of talked about environments, but are there standard like a reference vehicles that you would like to have set up? So there's some commonality between sort of PX4 and ArduPilot simulation for some of the vehicles historically, like the Iris and the Zephyr were two vehicles that were used in examples. We might want to move on from that. I think the sort of X500, I think there's a nice model for that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that because I think from the hardware page as well, that seemed like the default good baseline, right?
So if there's a vehicle that or a couple of vehicle types, maybe something like maybe a plane, because there's the number of requests have come up for people asking for a kind of a Cessna model to be set up properly in Gazebo. But if there are a couple of vehicle types, so like a copter, like a VTOL plus like a regular plane, and that there were then we could put a bit of effort into trying to improve those models and have them work for like the different environments. So have them work for AeroStack, have them work for ArduPilot, and have them work for PX4 and any other kind of native plugins.
I think a lot of this is coming from outdoor, because for GPS denied environments, I'm thinking more along the lines of different weight classes of quads. So the X500 might be a good platform for that weight class. But let's say if you want to do a crazy fly or like swarming research with like smaller platforms, I feel like a plane or a VTOL might not be that hard a requirement for indoor or GPS denied environments. But
probably not for indoor.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I think when it comes to aerial for indoor, quads are all we need. The other vehicle classes can definitely be like very valuable for outdoor research. Like planning for the most part will be the VTOL or like fixed wings, like what Jay and Ryan are doing. But yeah, I would be, at least I feel X500 is a good place to start, so that you're not limiting yourself with like any payload assumptions for indoor navigation. Then we can see if we want to do like at least 2 weight classes to begin with, like an X500 and a crazy fly and things like that. But yeah.
Yep. Okay. And maybe a vehicle and a sensor set as well, like what sensor payload might you like to have. So that would be really useful, because that's something that we could that's something concrete that we could make some tracks on, and it's something that we could try and make because the models are sort of compatible across the different stacks that use Gazebo, but they're not totally interchangeable. But it would be something to aim for. That would be of a benefit, I think, to lots of people.
So I really like the ArduPilot GSOC approach that I think Sanket or whoever had worked on the ArduPilot ROS stuff, where they literally took an iris, they slapped a 2D LiDAR on it, and whatever people do with Carto and 2D, he extended it to like flying cartographer essentially with Nav2. I think even from a simulation perspective, that could be at least a good place to start, and a reasonable assumption that somebody could use something similar to an X500 and have like an RP LiDAR or a 2D LiDAR on it. And in terms of sensor suite, that's a good starting point for you. So if we can do, like if it's already supported, then great, we can start talking about maybe other depth cameras and things like that. But in terms of sensor suite, just having a 2D LiDAR to start would be at least what I think is a very good starting point.
Could I perhaps add something to that as well?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so like, would it be perhaps a good idea to make it to at least get the quadcopter examples from Gazebo itself to a bit more up shape condition? Because there's the multicopter example has a couple quadcopters in there, and I think we've already talked about like ours is trying to tune it as well. But to keep it a bit, how do you call it, autopilot agnostic, in the sense of like, to that it is maybe be more easier for people to set up, at least to get started, before they do like the full software in the loop and everything. I don't know if that's perhaps also an approach to go instead of yeah.
It's an interesting point to bring up, but doesn't that go in the Rep 150 direction? Like, for it to be truly agnostic of autopilot, like you'll need we either stick to Mavros or we have that standard messaging format we've spoken about earlier in other meetings, right?
Yeah, that's true. But
envision
we
that
also have
happening?
like people from Peaks 4 here as well, and I don't know, the Grace 5 firmware. So it's I'm just like saying like perhaps that's that might be maybe like a lower bar to kind of first clear out before kind of like grabbing things in. But it's up to you. So of course, like what you guys think is more useful for beginners to get started with.
Kim, I think that's a good idea, because I think most of the physics that you would use in the model are going to be available as kind of native plugins to Gazebo or distributed with Gazebo, and then the different flight stacks, they drive those plugins through kind of the Gazebo message bus. So I think that's quite a good target to have, and the way that the different flight stacks would kind of drive them might be a little bit different, but the core model that they would use and the way that the physics and the kind of tuning of the rotors and everything like that could be common to both, or to all of them, which I think would save people a lot of time if you had that kind of nicely set up and explained.
Yeah, I guess like I noticed for maritime that they have tutorials for these, for like the boat, at least the boat plugins that they have in Gazebo. So
Yeah.
perhaps we can focus on something that is focusing on the multicopter plugins of Gazebo itself, which are very well said. Like the lead controller that's based on is very difficult to control. But I do know that for an Aerostack uses those plugins directly to for their simulation. So it's
there's quite a nice discussion. I have to dig it up on the parameterization used in the multi-copter rotor model, and there's some criticism of it as well by a dynamicist, because of the way the parameters have been set up. But it's quite informative. I'll try and dig it up, and we can kind of put a link to that, because if your copter is not an iris, which is where most of the original settings came from, then some of the coefficients are going to be quite different. And I think if you want to have a correspondence, but if you just want to have a vehicle that will let you test whether the nav stack works, then it probably doesn't matter too much. But if you want to have a vehicle that roughly corresponds to its equivalent in real life, then you need to do quite a bit more work on the physics, and that goes back to the fidelity of the models. And so I think that's the part where people struggle a little bit when they come across the new plugins. It's to try and figure out, I have a copter, but instead of being 250 grams, it's like 10 kilograms, and I need to get it set up and work properly, and I can't get it tuned. And then people get really stuck. And I think a bit of help on that would be really useful. Like you've said, they've done for the maritime stack. Where
right.
I think the maritime stack probably gets a bit more attention because of the VRX project, which drives a lot of those plugins, and there isn't really an equivalent, I think, at the moment for the aerial space.
Well, what's that project called again for maritime?
A VRX. So it's
VRX.
Yeah. So it's Brian Bingham and the guys from Hawaii kind of like drive that quite a lot, but it's used as a companion to the I can't remember the name of it, but there's a maritime robotics competition that uses the WAM-V robots, and so this is the virtual space for that. So every time they run the physical contest, they pre-run the virtual one with it as well. So it gets quite a lot of attention and support because of that.
All right, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I think that's. I think we've discussed that enough. So, like, perhaps we can continue on Discord and maybe have like to align some of the the goals a bit indeed on the project, and perhaps we can set up a meeting with us, maybe in particular the simulation indoor, just to kind of like tweak some things out. I don't know if that might be a good idea, but to have at least a golden star to work towards too.
Okay, I think Arsh's points, like the way he's framed it is really nice for indoor, and maybe we should add it to the meeting notes. Like he's mentioned how there are two types of different people that use sim tools with ROS. One that don't care about SITL and HITL and just want to validate the algo and use it with some simple vehicle with a ROS wrapper, like Aerostack 2. And then the other class who care about SITL and HITL and want to test various types of vehicles like RDO or PX4. So I think this categorization is really interesting and can maybe provide clarity going forward for indoor also. What category does our dev lie under? Is there something we're doing purely for the algo itself? Like, are we trying out some new SLAM? We want to do it agnostic to autopilots, or let's say we're taking some mature existing SLAM algos and stuff like that, and we want to really fly it in the real world, and we're just doing a sanity check with City or something like that.
All right. I've added this notes to the notes.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I really have to get used to this note taking, so I'll have some reviews for that.
It's fun.
But maybe it's a good idea to. I guess we can move on.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. Do we have any other discussion topics? It seems like we don't.
We had to review the website from Aerial Robotics Landscape, but I guess like you guys have already seen it, so I would vote to avoid that and just give the feedback offline.
Sounds good. Then I guess we also touched on the to-dos, didn't we? So simulation discussed. No, author navigation, getting help for the geomap binary release. That was already discussed, right?
Yeah, it's unclear what the state is for that.
All right. Then determining standard environment plus simulation people to work on. Sort of the same discussion. And then website stuff. All right. So I guess the last topic is the conclusions, which is basically introducing the next meeting. So next meeting will be in May 22nd, same time, and it's going to be about flapper drones. Wait, it's moving. Okay, flapper drones, bio-inspired platforms for R&D and drone shows, and how did we get there? By Matek Karasek. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your name right. Sorry.
Karasek.
Matek Karasek. Yeah, that should be pretty fun, and I really look forward for that. And yeah, that's gonna happen May 22nd. Anything else that we should be discussing before we end the meeting? All right, lastly, we do have already sort of like a full schedule of presentations meeting for the next 6 months, which should cover pretty much the rest of the year. So thanks to everyone that submitted and that has helped us so far. This is turning out to be a very successful work group, thanks to Kim. So other than that, I have nothing else to say, but thank you, Kim, and thank you everyone that joined us today. Mayank, go ahead before we end the call.
Yeah, just a question to maybe you, Ramon, and even Reese. Typically, how much is the effort for PX4 and RD Pilot to support the latest and greatest ROS distro? Like, is it like you guys are already supporting rolling and it's easier to go to Jazzy when it comes out? Or is there typically some test cycles which come out, and let's say even if Jazzy comes out in 2 weeks, we should expect some delay of the order of weeks or months before like PX4 and RD are like, hey, yes, we're on Jazzy too?
I don't know. That's a good question, since like all the integrations are kind of new. At least for PX4, I haven't seen anything on this end, and I also don't know where it could go wrong, but famous last words. So, Riz?
Yeah, I think it should mostly be okay. We've sort of started having, so there's been some work just recently, like ArduPilot have just upgraded so that they can build all their stack using Python 12, which is the 3.12, which is one of the prerequisites. And the main obstacle for me getting getting migrated over to Jazzy or really rolling is that most of it's other platform support. So there've been some changes which mean that the RQT stack for ROS rolling doesn't build on Mac OS. So I'm trying to get that to work. And if that works, then I'm fairly sure that at least the ROS rolling, which is slightly ahead of Jazzy, will be able to be supported. And we can set up an Ubuntu. I think Ryan's looking at Ubuntu 24. So I think I think it's mostly there. It shouldn't be a huge gap. For the nav stack work, it's actually easier because the navigation work that you were referring to, Mayank, is not in Humble, and I think because Steve McKenzie found it was going to be too difficult to backport it into Humble, so we've had to do a couple of patches, and they've not been released yet. So for some of the stuff, it's going to be easier to go to Jazzy because the kind of changes have already been put into rolling and then put out. So it's not working yet, and we haven't got it tested, but I don't think there's too big a changes. So I'm hoping that we'll be there fairly soon.
So it'll just be a matter of dependencies. Like if I'm doing some tests right now, and let's say if Kato or something else is imported, that'll be the long pole. But at least on this side, you're saying things should, at least on paper, work, just like what Ramon said.
Maybe that could be something that we could give that could be an action item for this group, is to give an update on the status of support for Jazzy.
If you guys could reach out to PX4 and Arduino and get confirmation, at least on some timelines, it really helps on how much effort one should do in terms of building from source, and even having that as like an example or something like that. If it's a matter of a week or two, we might as well wait. But I think Ash's point is valid.
Yeah, well, it might be a bit more than a week, but it's coming. So.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like we're saying, like from the Autopilot and PX4 perspective, it should just work. It would be more about your development environment and all of that.
Yeah. The big change, I think, for everybody is all the Python work is virtual environments are required. So I think getting used to properly sandboxing all your development environment now is something would be good to do, because you don't have the choice on Ubuntu 24. So all your Python environments need to be virtual environments. And so it's an extra hurdle. And I know that there was a discussion of that in the ArduPilot dev meeting this morning about kind of the kind of additional load on developers who are not used to working like that, because quite much of the tooling, and even for ROS, it relied on using system Python. I think that's going to be the big change, is to sandbox all of that stuff.
Just a quick question, Reese. Is this for canonical Ubuntu?
Yeah.
Is that
Okay,
so, because their GUIs, like at least a lot of the GUI backend is based on Python, I believe.
Yeah. So I think the rule is that that you can't pip install anything outside of a virtual environment anymore. So everything that's packaged as a Python library or Python package is either a system install using apt, or if you need to do an extension like a local source build or something like that, then it has to be an event. So that's the big change.
Good to know. Good to know.
Sounds painful.
Yeah. By the way,
I'm practice too.
Not too bad. It's not too bad, but it's just it's a change of habit. So.
Necessary but painful.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the ROS development team is also because it's like putting the ROS development environment in a pip environment is.
Yeah, it does work. It
has worked. Okay.
I've been building rolling, so like because I had to try and build both Python 3.11 and Python 3.12 versions on Macs, so you can build a full ROS from source inside a virtual environment, and actually once you do it, it's much cleaner because you don't wind up with all the packages kind of polluting your system.
I've been doing this since Melodic, by the way, with ROS1. There's just like a CMake flag you give to specify the virtual environment while installing or building with Catkin, and I guess similar with Colcon. It works. It's just it works, but it takes getting used to.
Can I just
Alright,
store
everyone.
a Docker image for each?
Yeah.
I just want to add some very
ahead,
quick.
Kim.
I'm on Pop OS, and they actually are going to do their full desktop version in Rust. But I still have to wait until October. So then they don't have that issue. Probably. But yeah. Sorry, Ramon. Take
All right, well, we're just ending the call, I guess. Thank you, everyone. This was really fun. And I'll talk to you on the next call, May 22nd. Don't forget. Talk to you soon. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
And we're stopping the recording.
Bye.
One moment.
Bye bye. Stay safe.